I'll do a video here how to troubleshoot a parasitic power drain. Basically what's going on here is if I leave this truck sit for like 2-3 days, batteries will be dead. And it just started randomly over the winter. Put brand new batteries in thinking my batteries are bad, and they were old, which was part of the problem but not the exact problem. So try and show you here what we do. Find your fuse box here. There's one here and there's one inside the cab on the left side of the dash. You want to let the vehicle, if you want, you can leave the door open and let everything shut down for about 20 minutes. My problem's not inside the cab. I've found my problem. But what you want to do is you take your negative battery cables off of both your batteries. If you got 2 batteries, you take your negatives off and get your multimeter, and then stick your multimeter in your negative. Then you take your positive and touch your negative post, and it's showing that I have 1.28, about 1.30 amps of power draw here. So what you'll do is you'll hold that there like that and watch that, and pull your fuses in here until that power drops like that, basically. So one of the most common ones is alternator diode. In order to test that, just take and pull your wire off the back of your alternator, and if the numbers go away to 0, basically your alternator diode's bad. In my case, it's not the alternator. I'm going to try and stick this in here, and I'll show you here if I can get this to stay. Basically, biggest ones is the alternator, and then if you look on here, it'll be your IPC DIC 10 amp, and then your radio 15 amp. And those are right here, your IPC 10 amp and your radio 15 amp. So basically your IPC is your gauge cluster in your dash, and sometimes those stepper motors won't shut off inside of there. So in order to test that, let's see where we're at. I'm going to get a better connection on here real quick. Pull that, set that there. Alright, we're back up to 1.35 roughly. I'm going to pull my stereo fuse. See it drop down. Put it back in. Jump back up. Now I'm going to pull my gauge cluster. See, it drops down. Pull both the gauge cluster and the radio down to there. So that's my problem with this truck. I gotta send in the gauge cluster to get it rebuilt, and I'm gonna get a new stereo to put in here, because I believe them to be both bad. The screen on my stereo doesn't come on, and it hasn't for ages, and the gauge cluster don't work as good as it used to. So that's basically how you troubleshoot this system here. You pull your fuses, you can pull these guys here too, and see if your numbers drop down. And if nothing changes in here, you can go inside the cab and right here is another fuse block. So if that helps somebody, I hope it does. I watched YouTube videos to figure it out, but the more YouTube videos out there, the better, I think. Thanks for watching. Another way you can confirm for sure too if it is parasitic jaw is to pull your dash cluster out. You'll just take the housing off, and then there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 bolts. You'll want to tip your steering wheel down and put your shift selector all the way down to get in there. They're 7mm bolts. Pull those 4 bolts, unclip your dash cluster, and you'll come over here, and what you can do is put your 10 amp fuse back in, which I'm going to do right now. Let's see if it changes anything, and it hasn't changed anything. I'm going to take and there you go. I just restuck this again. I wasn't holding on to it, so it wasn't a good connection, but you can see it didn't change anything. It's what it was before I pulled the gauge cluster. So that's another thing you can do, is pull the gauge cluster out and make sure that you ain't got no amperage running somewhere else randomly.